All right, so what we're going to get into in today's episode is some pretty advanced sales training. This is the type of work that I do with an agent when I coach them. And so you may have to watch this a few times for you to really get it. But I think for most of you, you're going to say, wow, that makes a ton of sense. And through that, you may understand why it is that most cold calling scripts that either you're using now, you've used in the past, they just simply don't work. This is mainly why I have so many agents that reach out to me that say, well, listen, I am doing the work. Like I am putting forth the effort. I am making the calls. I am having conversations, but they don't go anywhere. Oftentimes, Brandon, I can't even get through the first question in the script before I'm met with some type of pushback, resistance, objection that I don't know how to handle. Well, in this episode, I'm going to walk you through exactly what's happening, why so many of you are struggling in these conversations. And it's just simply because you haven't been trained on how the human brain works when it comes to decision making. And so today I'm going to break down all the science. I'm going to break down why maybe what you're doing isn't working, and then some things that you perhaps can be doing differently. All right. The first thing we have to look at is, okay, what is the purpose of a prospecting phone call? What is the purpose? And so when I ask agents that question in a group or maybe with an agent that I would coach, I get answers like, well, to generate a lead or to set an appointment. Well, those are outcomes to a prospecting phone call. Those are potential outcomes. But what's the purpose of the call? All right, the purpose of the call is to find a motivated homeowner that wants to sell their home. That is the purpose of prospecting. It's sort of like sorting through gumballs at the amusement park. You put it's this huge thing of blue gumballs and they're really small, but inside of this huge gumball machine, there's this promise that there's some huge red gumballs. And so you'll see the kid there putting in quarter after quarter after quarter. And they're just sorting through blue gumball, blue gumball, blue gumball, blue gumball. They keep going until they hopefully find the big red gumball that they want. Well, the world of prospecting is very similar to that. We know that the vast majority of conversations are blue gumballs. These are people that are unmotivated. They don't have a real need to move. We're looking for the red gumball. The problem is this. Most agents that just, again, haven't been trained are they believe that they can say something rather to turn a blue gumball into a red gumball. And so they end up spending a ton of time chasing unmotivated prospects and kissing frogs, meeting with a ton of sellers that never actually go anywhere, building their pipeline of what they would consider leads that end up never answering their call again. You've probably experienced that. So that's one big problem. Or when they actually do the work and they sort through all the gumballs and they find a red gumball, they finally find somebody with real motivation to sell a home, they ruin that opportunity because they don't know how to handle themselves in that situation. They don't know how to handle that conversation. So therefore they turn off the prospect. They're unable to handle that conversation and actually have it lead to anything. All right. So that's the issue. So let's talk about what's going on here. The first thing that we have to understand, if you're ever going to get good at selling, is you have to understand psychological reactance. All right. This is the primary issue with most sales scripts that most people are using right now in prospecting, is because they don't understand psychological reactance. Even these gurus that have been, coaching real estate agents for decades and decades and decades, it's abundantly clear that they don't understand the science, that they don't understand the the issue with how they are training agents to have these conversations. And so therefore, most agents end up having to deal with a bunch of prospects that give them a bunch of resistance and a bunch of pushback, and they have to deal with objections. My belief is that you should never even have to worry about objections if you can communicate the way we're going to talk about today. So first, let me just walk you through when we're talking about reactance, psychological reactance. So the most simplistic way to understand that is this. All right. So if I read this to you on screen, it says this. What is reactance theory? Reactance theory suggests that when individuals perceive their freedom of choice is being restricted, they experience psychological reactance. A motivational state aimed at reclaiming that freedom, which often results in them doing the opposite of what they feel pressured to do. Now, when I look at most real estate scripts out there for cold calling or prospecting, or even at the listing presentation, most of them are written in a way that does nothing but elicit more of what you do not want, which is psychological reactance. These people in our industry are teaching you how to communicate in a way that does you more harm than good. And this is why you don't like making calls. This is why you don't feel comfortable in a sales conversation, because it kind of feels just off. And you can kind of feel that salesy coming out. Well, that's why so many prospects resist you. Yeah? That's why you're met with so much pushback, because how you were taught to communicate just simply doesn't work. So the main issue, again, is psychological reactance. The cause of this is the following. When we look at the causes, when we look at the screen, there's two parts, right? When we look at that definition. So if we break that definition into its most simplistic parts, what you're going to see is this. One is something that we're going to talk about, which is called autonomy, and the other, which is called perceived bias. So what we know, based on all the research that social psychologists have done on for not us as salespeople, but us as a human species, is that when you challenge someone's autonomy and they feel as though, again, their freedom to make their own decision is at risk, the only thing that happens is more motivation to do the opposite. That's the interesting thing. Even if it's against their own interest. So if you're talking to a prospect, even if they are motivated to sell a house, if they feel as though, based on how you're communicating, if they feel as though any sales pressure, you then elicit that reactance. And even when you find a red gumball, the way you communicate turns them off. They fight back, they push back, they lie to you and lead you to believe that they have no motivation because of how you're communicating. Because what I often tell agents that I coach is we have a huge responsibility on how people respond to us based on how we communicate with them. In other words, a lot of how people react to you is based on how you're communicating with them. There are no bad prospects. There's only bad salespeople. You can't be a bad prospect. They're not in class learning how to be a good or bad prospect. There's only bad salespeople. So that's number one. So autonomy. Number two is something called perceived bias. So again, when I look at all these scripts, and we're going to look at a bunch of bad examples in just a second, they are all written to be about the salesperson. And what happens is the prospect rather says, well, you're only asking me that question so that you can try to use that against me and try to sell me something. The perception that the prospect has most of the time when you're going through bad scripts is, well, Mr. Salesperson, obviously, you're only asking me that because you're trying to make a sale. It's obvious. So of course, I have to defend myself. And so that's how your script is being perceived, that this is just all about you. You're just trying to find another listing. Well, I'm not interested in that. Yeah. So when we look at autonomy, most sales scripts, the way they're written is to bulldoze your way into conversations. And I'll show you. I'm literally going to pull up some scripts and you're going to see exactly what I mean in a second. They're written in a way for you to bulldoze your way into having a conversation. And you could just start to vomit all over the prospect rather than getting the prospect's permission to have conversation. Okay, we're talking about autonomy here, okay? So the way that most scripts are written is rather than, because here's what we know, that when we give people the autonomy to make their own decision, compliance goes up with your request. Now listen closely. I told you this was going to be advanced, so just stick with me. When somebody feels their autonomy is being is taken away, compliance for our request goes down. So that's a huge insight for you, as all these scripts are written in a way for you to not support their autonomy. It's to actually do the opposite, because most untrained sales trainers coming out there and telling you, well, you just need to control the conversation and you just need to, be really assumptive and just, talk your way into that thing. Well, what happens is when you try to bulldoze your way into conversation without giving the prospects the autonomy to make their own decision, you then get met with a bunch of pushback. You know this is true because it's happening to you every single day. So we'll talk about the difference in just a second on how to be invited to have the conversation. Just imagine for 1 second, you reach out to a complete stranger. They don't know you, you don't know them. And if you've ever picked up the phone and you've done that, done the wrong way is difficult because you're met with so much rejection. You know that is a true statement. Well, what if there's a world where you can do that behavior, pick up the phone, do what you know you should be doing, which is to proactively generate conversations so that you can help more people, but rather than be met with resistance, you're met with an invitation to have the conversation. That is how we structure conversations when I coach a real estate salesperson. That's what I'm talking about. Now, next, let's talk about perceived bias. So most of how these scripts are written and designed, which I'll show you in just a second, they're written in a way where after you bulldoze yourself into a conversation, they start to pitch without ever even discovering any type of pain or motivation. They just get right into sales mode. And what do you think you're met with? That's right, more psychological reactance. Just as a simple example, it'd be like if someone were to sell divorce legal services, they call a prospect out of the blue without even knowing if this person has any need for divorce legal services. They just start selling them. We've got the best attorneys, we've got the highest win rate, blah, 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 blah. And the prospect says, I'm not even married. Yeah, but we've got wait, did you not hear me? I'm not married. Not only am I not married, even if I was, I don't need divorce legal services. You see, most scripts are written in a way that doesn't even allow you to ask good Socratic style questions to discover whether or not this person even has any type of need for what it is that you're selling. And in our world, certainly we're talking about the services of real estate, hiring you as a real estate professional to sell their house. Most of you are bulldozing your way into conversation, and without even knowing if this person has any real motivation. Even if they did, you're losing the opportunity because of how you show up, you throw up all over the prospect, and you hope you get one. It's just not working, yeah? All right, so what happens here? The prospects, they know this, yeah? So they have a defense system to defend themselves against people like you. And when I say you, I'm not you specifically watching this video. I'm talking about real estate agents. So they have to defend themselves against bad salespeople that haven't learned how to communicate. So what do? What does their defense system look like? Well, number one, they lie. They are put in a position to lie. They tell you they're not interested when they are. They tell you they are interested when they are not. We put them in a position to lie to us, to mislead, to manipulate us, to use us against they manipulate us so that they can extract information from us just to use against us and use a competitor. They do it all the time. So let me show you some examples of some what I would call really, really bad scripts. Okay. So what's funny is, if you just Google real estate cold calling scripts, you'll find things like this, right? The 15 best real estate cold calling scripts on the internet. Wow, these must be pretty damn good. These are the best ones on the internet. Okay, interesting. Let's see. So they have a couple different examples of when you would use their best scripts, if you will. I just listed just sold call, meeting somebody, calling a for sale by owner. Let's look at this as the first one. So here's the script. All right, let me just read the whole script to you guys. It says this. Hi, Bob. My name is Brandon, and I'm a real estate agent with Remax. And I'm making up this name. It just says your brokerage. I noticed that you're selling your property and wanted to reach out to see if you'd consider working with a professional to help you get the best value of your home. I specialize in assisting homeowners like yourself in navigating the complexities of the real estate market and ensuring a smooth and successful sale. I have a proven track record of achieving top dollar for my clients and would love the opportunity to do the same for you. Would you be open to a brief conversation to discuss how I can help you maximize the potential of your property and achieve your real estate goals? Okay, now, most of you are just laughing right now, right? Because it's like, if you've ever picked up the phone and called a for sale by owner, you know with 100% certainty this would never work. Well, why? Let's break this down. Number one, look how long it takes to get out the first question. It's 1, 2, 3 paragraphs before a question is ever asked. If you were to ever attempt this, you wouldn't get past the first sentence because the prospect would say, no, let me just cut you off right there. I'm not interested. As soon as you say, hey, owner name, this is agent name with real estate brokerage, they say, nope, I'm not interested. Take me off your list. You wouldn't even get to the second sentence. You know that. I know that. That's number one. So number two, remember how I said that most scripts are written to bulldoze their way into a conversation? If this isn't an example, I don't know what else is. See, the script is written with the assumption that the prospect owes us something. Now, and I know prospects owe us nothing, in that the prospect is not going to sit there and just listen to you babble on without you getting their permission to get into that conversation, because this goes against the entire rule of psychological reactance. This is this person forcing this conversation down someone's throat. They just start to, like I said, show up and they just start throwing up. I this and I that, and I'm the best, and I have a proven. They don't care about you. This is not about you. Prospects don't owe you anything. So when you get a sales call like this, how would you react, right? I'm calling from XYZ company and we specialize in this and blah, 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 blah. Nope, not interested. Even if you were interested, you're not interested because there's so much reactance. We haven't respected their autonomy to find out if they even want to have this conversation. So therefore, they're going to fight to not have the conversation. And to boot, look at how much potential perceived bias there is. Listen, watch this. They say, I noticed that you're selling your property and I wanted to reach out to see if you've considered giving me money. That's exactly what this thing says. I've noticed that you're selling on your own, but I don't care about that. I'm calling to find out if you want to give me your money. Well, of course, the real estate agent's saying that because they want to get a listing. And so now more reactance is elicited from the prospect. I specialize in blah, blah, blah. I have a proven track record of blah, blah, blah. Okay, this is all about who? This is all about the salesperson. So, of course, the salesperson's saying all these things because they think that, well, if I, vomit all this stuff about myself, then maybe they'll get interested. No, it doesn't work that way because you made it about you. All right, let's look at their expired listing script. This might even be worse. All right, here's what it says. Hi, name. This is Agent from Agent Brokerage. I'm calling about the property on 123 Main Street. Because I saw the listing has expired, I understand that selling a home can be a challenging process, and sometimes listings don't yield the desired results. However, I have a proven track record of successfully selling properties that were previously expired or unsold. I'd love the opportunity to discuss how I can help you reposition your property in the market and attract the right buyers. My approach includes targeted marketing strategies, expert negotiating skills, and personalized attention to ensure a smooth and successful sale. Would you be open to a brief conversation to explore how I can help you get these results? Okay, again, who is it about? Who's this whole script about? It's about the salesperson getting what the salesperson wants. This is the pitch. This is the thing. This is the salesy part of most scripts and how they're written. That the perception on how that lands with the prospect is blah, 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 blah. They don't want to hear it. Amongst all the other reasons we talked about why this script would just simply not work, the whole thing is about the salesperson and not about the prospect. The prospect doesn't feel safe. You see, the goal of a prospecting call, we talked about it, is to find somebody that has real motivation to sell a home. How do we have to do that? We have to make them feel comfortable. We have to make them feel comfortable to have a conversation with us for us to find out if they have motivation. If they don't feel comfortable, the call's not going to go very long. You're not going to find out if they have any motivation or not, which is ruining the purpose of the call. Because you call and you make it all about yourself, you can't even get into a conversation. You make prospects resist you. You make the prospect defend. You make the prospect tell you they're not interested when they are because of all these scripts. So, what do we have to do? All right. Write this down, take a picture of it, do something. But if you want to be treated differently, all right, I'm talking about this right here on screen. If you want to be treated differently, in other words, if you want to have prospects invite you to have conversations with them, if you want to have better conversations, if you want to have less objections, deal with less rejection, if you want all of that, you then, my friends, must act, behave, and communicate completely differently than everybody else, than all of your competitors. You have to act, behave, and communicate completely different than everyone else. Let's talk about how to do that. You have to understand how to communicate in a way that does not elicit reactance. You actually have to have an anti-reactance language system. So let me explain to you how this works. Again, I know this is very advanced things, and some of you are like, man, Brandon, I haven't even made my first phone call yet, and you're talking about anti-reactance language. Okay, just stick with me. This will make a lot of sense. So when we look at all behavior, in our world, we're talking about the world of sales, yeah? We're talking about behavior change or behavior not to change. That is all that we deal with, right? In our world, we're talking about someone selling a house or not selling a house. Someone meeting with you, not meeting with you. That's the literal sense of change, not change. Because all sales is just change, right? It doesn't matter if you're selling technology or personal real estate services. All sales is the process of people changing what they're currently doing. That's what selling is. And most of you do it wrong because you try to convince people that they should change, right? Rather than asking questions to allow people to discover for themselves why they should change. You see, this is a vital piece of this video. And for the few of you that are still here, this is going to serve you for the rest of your life. While most salespeople ask questions to figure out how they can sell them something, the great salespeople ask questions to help prospects identify and discover for themselves why buying something from you is in their best interest. There's a huge difference. So rather than try to convince somebody, hey, I'm going to convince you to meet with me, I teach agents how to ask Socratic style questions to help prospects discover for themselves that they should meet with you. That rather than force your way into an appointment or beg or plead for an appointment, that they invite you to come over and have a conversation. Wouldn't that be great? Well, I'm trying to teach that to you right now. So change versus no change. Okay, most of you are making arguments for why the person should, why they should change, right? I just showed you a bunch of scripts on what most people are saying. So you show up and you make the argument for why they should meet with you. All your reasons. I have a targeted marketing strategy. I'm an expert negotiator. I give personalized attention. I give great client service. People don't make decisions based on your reasons. They make decisions for their own reasons. And the more you try to vomit your reasons on people, the more motivated they are to do the opposite. We've talked about this. So when you show up and your scripts are all designed on making all these arguments for why they should do this and why they should do that and why they should meet with you and all this stuff, all you're doing is giving them more motivation to do the opposite of what you want them to do. We spent the last, 15, 20 minutes explaining the science behind this, and now it's getting into practical application. So when you show up and you make the script about why they should do something, why they should talk to you again, why they should meet with you, why they should sell their house right now, I bet you're getting a whole bunch of reasons on why people say why they can't. And there's no bad prospects. There's only bad salespeople, remember? So while you stay in this category of explaining why this person should do something, it most often turns into some type of objection on why they can't. Now, yes, if you do enough of anything, certainly you can play the numbers games, and do thousands and thousands and thousands of calls, and then you vomit on enough people that eventually somebody takes. Yes, you can do that. But I don't know about you, but if there's a better way and I don't have to work so hard to get way better results, I want to know how to do that, right? So what's the alternative then? Well, the alternative then is for you to actually remember we talked about completely changing the way you communicate, right? When you start making the argument over here on this quadrant, to do nothing, we look for prospects to argue against that on why you're wrong. So you introduce the idea for no. You actually go for the no. You actually communicate to the prospect that there is no interest and let prospects argue why you're wrong. Right? When you ask questions like, Mr. Prospect, I get the feeling that even if you were to get a great offer on your property, that you're going to tell me you're not interested. No. What makes you think that? We would, if we had a great now who's doing the selling? Now, because we've made the argument on the other side of the quadrant, we know now how to not elicit reactance, but how to do the opposite. We present the argument for the status quo. We are the ones that speak against what would be perceived our interest, right? As real estate salespeople, we tell them to stay the same. We tell them to stay put, and we look for prospects to argue against that. That's how you find real motivation. And if they don't argue against you and they don't tell you you're wrong, then there is no motivation. That's how you get to the truth. All of your questions have to be designed in a way for you to present the prospect not doing something and see if they argue against why they should. You've got a beautiful home, Mrs. Seller. What don't you have that you already have in your current home? Why not just stay put? Well, Brandon, we'd love to stay put, but we need something bigger. We need something smaller. We need something closer to this. That's how you get them to verbalize their reasons for change. I'm hoping that this is making sense for you, right? So when we look at how do we structure this type of communication, when I teach an agent how to actually sell, we have to look at how do we structure and how do we have a strategy for questioning? How do we do this? Well, first off, we have to understand the difference between disqualifying and qualifying. Every single sales trainer out there in real estate is talking about qualify, 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 qualify. And it is wrong. Why is it wrong? Because qualifying is asking questions or attempting to convince somebody why they should do something. Disqualifying is when we introduce the argument for them not doing something and we let the prospect argue why we are wrong. It's what we just talked about. Because let me ask you this, for any of those that you that want to challenge this, is there more reasons on why prospects don't do business with you than there are reasons for them to? And all of you would say absolutely way more. There's a lot more reasons on why prospects tell me they don't want to do business with me than there are reasons for them to do business with me. So disqualifying is the process of finding those things out. If I can discover and get rid of all the reasons on why somebody wouldn't do business with me, what is there left over? Say it. It's only them doing business with me. But if I'm spending my time in communicating all the reasons why they should do business with me, then what happens? Then the prospect finds all the reasons on why they shouldn't. Does that make sense? In other words, qualifying is the process of, like we talked about, making the argument for why the prospect should do business with you. This is when we see people ask yes-oriented questions. If you like what I say, will you hire me? That is a bad question to ask. There's so much perceived bias. That is a qualifying question. We don't want to do that. We don't want to do that. We want to be invited. We don't want them to feel and recoil back to reactance. Oh, sounds like you're going to try to sell me. Sounds like you're selling me something. So we don't want to do that. We want to be invited in. So we actually go for the no. Mr. and Mrs. Prospect, let's just pretend that you believed after seeing my strategy that you thought and you genuinely believed that this would help you successfully get the home sold and allowed you to get closer to family. Is there any reason you can think of on why we wouldn't get together? Is there any reason on why you wouldn't invite me over to explore this more? We go for the no. Or better yet, Mrs. Prospect, let's just pretend that I showed you a completely different strategy that would allow you to actually get the property sold. Even if you genuinely believed that I could help you, I still get the feeling that you're going to tell me you're not interested. Am I right? I introduce them not doing the thing and let the prospect tell me, no, you're wrong, actually. If you can show us a different way to do this, we would absolutely want to meet with you. Yeah? That's how we elicit real motivation to act, to change, to do something, to take action forward. All right? And then the last thing is when we're having these conversations, we have to get their permission to have the conversation so that we can benefit off of the principle of consistency. So rather than bulldoze your way into a conversation, right? This is why I don't even call it a cold call, because when we communicate, we meaning the agents that I coach, when we reach out to prospects we've never talked to before, rather than just bulldoze our way into that conversation, we actually get their permission. They invite us to have the conversation. How do we do that? We use simple pattern interrupts. We say things like, Mr. and Mrs. Prospect, listen, I'll be upfront. I'm a real estate agent. Do you want to hang up or will you give me 30 seconds and then decide? And now we've given all the perception of control. We've respected their autonomy to make the decision for themselves. We know that when we do that, compliance with our request goes up. So as a result, 94% of the time, prospects say, you know what? I appreciate that. Sure. Go ahead. Go ahead. Have your 30 seconds. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Ask me a question. Whereas before, when we try to bulldoze our way using all the other scripts out there, it's very rare that you can even get into the first question. So I know today's episode was a bit more advanced, which is, I think, hopefully you would say helpful. But you tell me, let me know in the comments what questions you have about what it is that we just covered.